Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl not being made by Game Freak might actually be a good thing. Alright, it's May 4th. We got a couple days until a date that they should be putting out a trailer, and if not, then it's in June. And they're really mean for that. So Game Freak not making Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl might be a good thing. Now first, let's give our respect to Game Freak. I know you don't want to, but let's do it. I give them a lot of crap, but they're still really good developers. It's easy to choke as a game director or game creation studio. It's very easy to make a mistake that ruins the game. And Masuda, plus the Game Freak team, has maximized profit. Alas, at the cost of many great things, but good games don't always turn out successful. And they guarantee success. Okay, now back to crapping on them. Now to speak about how Game Freak not making Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl might be a good thing. Pokemon Stadium, made by a division of Nintendo and HAL Laboratory. This game came out in 1998 and it was the first time we saw the Pokedex, which was Kanto at the time, in full 3D. With all sorts of animations. Funny ones like Dorgio walking into the air, Machamp punching the ground and using Earthquake, Mewtwo using a Dragon Ball Z move on you to use Thunderbolt. Actual animations. Animations that haven't been done in the main series yet. Excluding Z moves, of course. All the gym leaders are there, it has all sorts of mini games, and the teams that the opponents used were filled with true movesets and fun thought gone into them. The strongest bird keeper you can fight in that game has Gyarados, Charizard, Aerodactyl, and then the 3 legendary birds. A cool trainer has Mew, full movesets of 4. A lot of thought went into this, and this isn't a Game Freak game. Chances are, if you work on Pokemon and you're not actually one of the big 3 that make up Pokemon, you approach it more passionately like a fan than from above like Game Freak. The game was so good it got a sequel for Gen 2. Pokemon Colosseum, coming out for Gen 3, took the reins further and had 3D again with Gen 3 now, except this time, it had its own region and story, the Ore region. It involved all sorts of legendaries, Celebi, Suicune, Ho-Oh. It had an overworld to explore. It was literally a real Pokemon game. An evil team, admins, leader, everything. Look at these graphics. This is 2003 and the overworld has that RPG vibe. Pokemon Colosseum is made by Genius Sonority. Colosseum turns out so good, a sequel comes out. XD Gale of Darkness, expanding on the Shadow Pokemon with nods to the previous game. Mirby having a new evil team, all of that. Now this is something you have to think about. The kind of work that went into Pokemon Colosseum and XD Gale of Darkness was really good, like Game Freak does with their games. And they're being limited to being part of the existing generation. They're forced under the wing of a spin-off. If they had the freedom to work on a main series game with new Pokemon introduced, new abilities, new legendaries to amplify the plot, it would have been up there as one of the best quote-unquote main series games out there. None of this was Game Freak's development. Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. This is a whole other can of worms. Both original Mystery Dungeon games were developed by Chunsoft, and they are some of the best games. From the music, to making use of the existing Pokemon creatively, to, most importantly, the story. Now, Mystery Dungeon is a style that's existed already. This is a game in 1993, and look at that. The Mystery Dungeon format you see in Pokemon. They took everything that a Mystery Dungeon game was and blended it perfectly with Pokemon. Type advantages, the attacks, everything was implemented perfectly. None of this was Game Freak developed. They could only work with what they got. They're not allowed to introduce new forms, new Pokemon, anything. And best of all, with being just a spin-off, they managed to write a story that's arguably better than any of the main story's plots we got. It goes from a harmless Pokemon that wakes up with no memory, that just wants to help people out and makes a friend, eventually being wanted as a criminal and forced to be on the run from everyone he just made friends with. They need you dead to save their world. You're not sure if you should be dead to save their world, but you also have one close friend that wants you alive, trusting that you can save their world another way, choosing to become a fugitive with you, which eventually opens up a new pathway to a good ending. The game's story is mixed with Pokemon Dex entries like Ninetales' Dex entry to curse people with its tails, and then all sorts of subplots like Team Gengar and Gengar's real identity. The inclusion of 3 legendary birds as bosses, all the way to Kyogre, Groudon, and Rayquaza, Mewtwo as a rare Easter egg. The story even has a really good ending, and it's all wrapped up with the fact that the player waking up as a Pokemon with no memories aside from the fact that he remembers being a human is the story bringing you, the player, into the story. Like, that's literally you in the game. You logged in and are trapped as a Pokemon, and that's why the game ends like it does. Not gonna say it. That's like Undertale level weirdness. And this isn't a Game Freak game, and it's also forced under the umbrella of being a spin-off. Then they go on to make Explorers of Time, a whole new concept involving time travel. It's not even a rehashed story of the first story because it was successful. They made a whole crazy different story, from mistaking who the real bad person is, to not realizing there's someone around you who's not supposed to be there, to having to unite with your enemy against an even bigger enemy, to by the end realizing what the story you just played was really about. The story has really good tropes, and there's barely any flaws with it at all. It's crazy to say. I don't know who wrote this story. You did a sick job. Again, forced under the umbrella. They used ILCA because they had to bring a time legendary. They couldn't invent their own because they're not allowed to. They freaking made Grovyle, this random mid-stage evolution, one of the sickest Pokemon. Imagine giving Chunsoft 5 cards out of the whole deck and telling him to make use of it, and then making a better game than you who has the whole deck and the right to make a new deck. Does that make sense? I don't have time, but more fun games: Pokemon Ranger, Pokemon Conquest, Pokemon Snap. Hey, guess who made Pokemon Snap? HAL Laboratory. Guess what game just got a sequel? Guess what company was able to make animations and bring Pokemon to life more than Game Freak since Gen 6, when Game Freak pretended to bring Pokemon to life in 3D? A non-Game Freak company. This game made me like Bidoof. That's what Pokemon is about. Why are all my favorite Pokemon the strong ones? Luxray, Infernape, Staraptor. Why does everyone have the same Diamond and Pearl team? I'm about to solo BDSP with just the Bidoof, because I know its animation now. I know the way it acts, its behavior. When it comes to non-Game Freak and non-creature Pokemon games, there really aren't any bad ones. They only get limited freedom because they will only ever be spin-offs, but still create really good games. And now introduce ILCA, who for the first time is a non-Game Freak, non-creature company taking on a main series Pokemon game. Meanwhile, Game Freak has been tunnel visioned over the years, stripping the essence of each game to follow this specific template and not actually seeing Pokemon for what it's really supposed to be. Now ILCA is making the game, not just alone, but co-directed by Junichi Masuda, which means the best of both worlds. Masuda, the original, is still there, and there's a distant team from Game Freak that can approach the game like a fan. After all this I said about being restricted, a main series game that actually has the freedom to introduce new forms and all sorts, that's what Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl are, for the first time. Now, will they do it? Literally nobody knows. But up till now, hearing that ILCA developed it, mixed with BDSP being one-to-one remakes that are quote-unquote hoping to be faithful, to seeing the chibi graphics right after we just played through Sword and Shield graphics, was all mixing into this feeling that this was more a remaster of Diamond and Pearl than a remake. Which remaster is not the right term to use for that, but you get what I mean. And it really still could turn out like that. No matter what game company this is, it's what Game Freak allows when they hand these dudes the torch. If they're still restricted, still not allowed to introduce new forms and all that, then it won't introduce it. Doesn't matter. It's just comparing it to the potential Auras had. Even freaking comparing it to Fire Red and Leaf Green. Introducing a whole Sevi Islands based off those Japanese islands. Stuff can only happen if they are allowed to do it. They do say one-to-one remakes. It's the scariest word that's been haunting my nightmares, because it literally cannot be one-to-one remakes without being literally the exact same games. So it's scary. And that's what this first trailer is going to show us. It's about May or June. That's when they're going to start their hype season for real, after that sad start of giving us Chibidon for 70 days with no new news. If they do introduce anything, it's going to be Masuda's word, but it's how they transform Masuda's word and the points that he gives into something better. So if there is a Dialga and Palkia form, they're gonna craft what it is based off Masuda's words. It's in their hands. If there is a new post-game and Masuda gives them the gist of that post-game, it's in their hands to craft that however best way they see fit. Hands that might appreciate the lore and do a better job with it than Game Freak, because they're distanced enough from Pokemon that they're a fan themselves and they want to make the best product. Unlike Game Freak, who eats where they crap, so they don't appreciate what they're working on. It all smells the same to them. It depends on what freedom Masuda gives them and what he has planned to allow them to do. And whatever happens in that trailer is the indication on how much freedom ILCA has been given by Game Freak and Masuda. Are they allowed to introduce Dialga and Palkia forms? Are they allowed to expand the story, both the main story and the post game? Are they allowed to make a glistening platinum-like episode? Are they allowed to use Dynamaxes, introduce new Dynamaxes? Are they allowed to introduce Mega Evolutions again? Will there be DLCs like Pokemon Sword and Shield? Will you expand Shaman's story and Darkrai's story and Arceus into the story? Will people from other regions come visit? Will they introduce new lore, splitting it into different universes, Mega Universe, the original universe? Will there be a Xenia-like character introduced into the main plot and coexisting with Team Galactic for the sake of some post-game plot? Could Diamond Pro Remakes turn into one of the most jam-packed, action-packed remakes just condensed into this chibi-looking game? Or will it just be a remaster? This is just my take. ILCA is not Chunsoft, is not any of the other companies I mentioned before, but they won't screw up the base games. Monster and Game Freak gave it to them for a reason. They obviously told them to go with Chibis. That's not ILCA's decision. One of the big things I mentioned in this is that non-Game Freak, non-creature companies are able to write really good stories, but Diamond Pro's already written, unless we're talking about a new post game. So it really depends on how much freedom they're given. See, Masada should surely care about his past work enough to make them good games. Diamond Pro are his games, especially since the whole world is watching and obviously knows that these games are following Oraz's hype. There's no way he's letting these games get butchered. So, Game Freak not making Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl might be a good thing. With that being said, if it turns out these games are remasters, I'll change my icon into a clown.
This the sound of my alchemy, the greatest success for all those who fell for me. I always respect the friends who wish well for me and live until the end and die. All time will tell for me, but I ain't going anywhere, believe me.